Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. It is early morning and we are in Whitefish, Montana along BNSF's Northern Transcon mainline. To start our day, Amtrak number 8, the eastbound Empire Builder, is pulling into its Whitefish station stop with one of the railroad's new Siemens ALC 42 Charger locomotives leading the way. Our focus today will be the BNSF Hi Line Subdivision, which runs east from Whitefish to Havre, Montana. This subdivision is home to Mariah's Pass, one of the most legendary stretches of rail line in the United States. Originally surveyed in 1889 and with an elevation of 5,213 feet, Mariah's Pass provided the Great Northern Railroad with a route through the Rocky Mountains to reach the Pacific Northwest. Today, it is still an integral part of BNSF's Northern Transcontinental mainline with all types of freight trains from high-priority intermodal to heavy grain shuttles crossing the pass daily.
Let me know when you're settled here. I'm going to hang out there.
Our first freight train of the day isn't one of the 10,000-foot-long behemoths that I just mentioned, but the BNSF Whitefish switcher backing out of the yard before heading east to switch a customer on the outskirts of town. The conductor protects the bottom of the train until they are at the junction, at which point the train stops, he hops off, and the train shoves back so he can get onto the lead locomotive. The switcher is now onto the main line and ready to go, but can't just yet as Amtrak number 8 is still in the station. But in just a few minutes, Amtrak number 8 gets back underway with the towering mountains it will have to ascend in just a few miles looming ahead. Passengers aboard this train are in for an incredible treat with the scenery they will get to take in over the next few hours.
For number 8. Dispatcher to AMG K316, still. Track 316, go ahead, over. I want to give you guys a heads up. I'm going to be flagging in the road switch behind you here at West Whitefish on Main 2. Roger that. We won't be stopping or backing up, over. Glacier Dispatcher to BNSF 2680. You said you're all red there at West Whitefish, correct? Correct.
With the Empire Builder now clear of the station, the BNSF switcher can get underway to head east of town.
Yeah, make sure you hear that one car in here.
As the local went about its day, we went about ours, grabbing some breakfast in town before heading east towards the Rocky Mountains. As the landscape quickly becomes more rugged, we made it to Belton Siding, located in the town of West Glacier, for our first mountain rail action of the morning. Certainly unexpected was this interesting train, a BNSF track geometry inspection train flying east, having no trouble with the grades. Just around this curve is the west entrance to Glacier National Park, which lies just to the north of Marias Pass. At West Glacier, U.S. Highway 2 and the Hi Line Subdivision parallel one another as the heart of Marias Pass begins. With towering mountains on either side of us, the significance of Marias Pass to the feasibility of getting a railroad through this terrain is clear. East of West Glacier, the line hugs the banks of the Flathead River's Middle Fork, making for an incredibly scenic few miles of track. Approaching from the east, a BNSF mixed freight train adds to the beautiful scene as it heads for Whitefish. In just a few more minutes, another westbound, this time an intermodal stack train, exits the tunnel and emerges along the banks of the Flathead River. While the primary purpose of this line today is to move freight, save for the 2 daily Amtrak trains, beautiful scenes like this emphasize the importance that railroads once played in tourism. The Great Northern Railroad existed long before roads like US 2, allowing people from around the world to experience the beautiful scenery of this area, the crown jewel being Glacier National Park. It was the Great Northern that opened to this part of America for the world to see, with the railroad building hotels in the region to offer the full tourist experience in what the railroad billed as America's Alps. In 8 more miles, we stopped in Red Eagle, a spot with a beautiful mountainous backdrop for westbounds, another of which was on the way. BNSF number 10,007, an H1-9, was on the point of more intermodal stacks destined for the Pacific Northwest. The intermodal train was slowing due to a meet ahead at Nyack, where the double track singles up to head through the tunnels and River Valley to West Glacier. The warmer months of the year are track work season on this part of BNSF's network, and the intermodal train was being held up by a loaded, continuous welded rail train crawling east after dropping rail between West Glacier and Nyack. small crane on the rear end of the train is used to guide the rail off of the racks onto the side of the right-of-way. With the line now clear, we headed back to milepost 1193 for one more shot of a train coming out of the tunnel, this time from the air. The blue water and rapids of the Flathead River, coupled with the luscious green pine trees now under the sunshine, made for one of the most beautiful scenes I have ever captured. It was now time to move further east into Marias Pass. At milepost 1180, we found a tied-down grain train with a CP leader, and in a few more minutes, an eastbound grain train came the other way, making for a nice meet and even nicer scenery. Quite a few trains were tied down on Marias Pass this morning, likely due to the track work in the area that we saw earlier, causing crews to time out. We found the rear end of the CP-led grain train at milepost 1179 and another loaded autorack train tied down right behind it. We got back on US 2 and quickly caught up to the grain train ascending Marias Pass. We pulled off in Essex, Montana at the Isaac Walton Inn to get another shot of them. Essex is home to a small BNSF yard and is the base of manned helper operations on Marias Pass. A set of engines is staged here at all times, waiting to assist trains over the steepest portion of the grade located between here and the summit to the east. The Isaac Walton Inn is a historic Great Northern hotel built in 1939 with incredible views of both the trains and the scenery. Unfortunately, it was closed during our trip here in 2024 for renovation, but 2 years prior we did stay a night here and were able to capture both the hotel and the operations in Essex Yard in detail. I will link to that video above if you would like to go see it. Less than a minute after the rear DPU on the grain train cleared, a westbound manifest comes around the curve on the downhill into Essex. Leaving Essex behind, we scouted out some more locations before moving to the summit of the pass at the Continental Divide. Struggling up to the top of the hill from the east was a heavy manifest train, arriving just in time for a quick drizzle of rain and wind. The clouds cleared up in time to reveal what I had initially hoped to get in the backdrop of this shot, the snow-capped mountains of Glacier National Park. We quickly got back on Route 2 and pursued the manifest train back west to get a couple more shots. First up was Snow Slip, where the drone provided a breathtaking view of the train navigating the Montana Rockies. At snow slip, the train enters an avalanche shed. There are a few of these structures positioned over the tracks on Marias Pass to protect against avalanches, as this area sees on average 250 inches of snow every year. Yet another nod to how impressive it is that this line was built through this terrain in the 19th century. There was one more shot of this train that we wanted to get, so we got back in the car and chased it another 10 miles to Goatlick Overlook, located inside Glacier National Park. At this densely forested location, the train passes over the Sheep Creek Trestle as it approaches Essex. Far below the trestle, the middle fork of the Flathead River is still running parallel to the tracks at this location. If I haven't commented enough on the scenery throughout this video, those riding Amtrak's Empire Builder truly are exposed to one of the most beautiful train rides in the world. We had heard on the radio that an eastbound was getting ready to depart Essex, so we stayed at Sheep Creek Trestle for a few more minutes until it showed up. This train is utilizing the assistance of the Essex helper set that I spoke about earlier in the video. At Essex, the two GEs tied onto the rear of the train to give it a shove up the pass. With a long drive still ahead to Havre and more than satisfied with our shots, we bid Marias Pass farewell and left the mountains behind for the flat prairie lands of central and eastern Montana. In just a few miles, the climate has changed from a mountainous forest to arid and dry plains with little vegetation. 15 miles past the East Glacier Park Amtrak station is Browning, located on the Blackfeet Indian Reservation, where we caught a heavy loaded oil train out of North Dakota beginning its uphill run towards the mountains. We continued east through the wide open prairies for another 30 miles to Cut Bank, where we found this large trestle. In just a few minutes, a westbound intermodal train came into view, making for a very cool shot despite the strong winds in this part of the state. In just a few more miles east of Cut Bank, we intercepted another westbound, this time a loaded grain train with its throttles wide open. caught up with yet another westbound grain train in Etheridge, Montana, just a few more miles down the line. In another few miles, we arrive in the town of Shelby, Montana, a significant stop on the former Great Northern, which now hosts a medium-sized yard and the junctions where the Sweet Grass Subdivision from the Canadian border and the Great Falls Subdivision from Great Falls and Helena merge into the Northern Transcon. Coming off the Great Falls line at Shelby, we found a local freight with a Cascade Green former Burlington Northern SD40-2 trailing second, which was an awesome surprise. After crossing this road, the train is merging back into the Northern Transcon main line, where it will travel to the Shelby Yard to tie down. While we were getting some more still photos of the BN unit, Amtrak number 7, the westbound Empire Builder, arrived and pulled into the station at Shelby. After stopping for a few minutes, number 7 got underway again, heading for Seattle and Portland behind another one of Amtrak's new ALC 42 locomotives. With a BNSD 40 and Amtrak, Shelby was well worth the stop. Now, resuming our journey east, we made it about 15 more miles to Tellstad in the middle of nowhere before another westbound came into the picture under some very interesting lighting conditions. With isolated storms building in the area, we continued east towards Havre. We made it to Tiber, Montana, milepost 1028, before we caught our last train of the day, another westbound loaded grain train. We followed the tracks all the way into Havre, but did not see any more trains. After a big dinner, we drove by the Havre yard to conclude this day trackside in Big Sky Country. Stay tuned for next time as we continue to explore the BNSF Northern Transcon. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed.